fresh off of taking in the sights, sounds, and seeing special guest Barry Alvarez at the final day of Wisconsin Badgers football fall camp. It is therapy time after 3 weeks here on Talking Badgers. Yes, it is Talking Badgers, powered by BadgerNotes.com. I am your host, Kedrick Stumbris. You can find me on the website formerly known as Twitter and Blue Sky at Kedrick Stumbris for the latest on the Wisconsin Badgers. While you are here, hit that subscribe button, smash that like button. If you're watching us on YouTube, youtube.com/@TalkinBadgers. Hit that bell so you get notified as soon as we put a new episode into your feed. Yes, we are fresh off of wrapping up all 3 weeks of Wisconsin Badgers football fall camp. 15 practices are done and dusted. What I want you to do while you're here, because we are going to include a special post-fall camp mailbag episode in your feed later on this week. I want you to head to those comments, Spotify comments, Apple Podcast reviews, the YouTube comments. Let me know your questions after Wisconsin Badgers fall camp, because I was there in person from Platteville to Madison, and I think we learned a lot about this Wisconsin Badgers football team. And that verb, I think, that's one of the main things we got to focus on. We're going to take a little bit of our therapy words and maybe misapply them a little bit into, I think, I feel, and I know about this Wisconsin Badgers football team after 15 practices this fall. You know, maybe we learned a few of these things during spring practice as well. It certainly informed my opinion of the team. But we're going to talk a little bit about, in this order, what I know about Wisconsin football for a fact after fall camp. What I think is the case, maybe I'm a little bit less certain, and what I feel about Wisconsin football. Just let out the emotions. It's been the longest off season in my lifetime as a Wisconsin Badgers football fan, seeing as they missed a bowl game for the first time in quite a long time. So a lot of emotions are boiling up. Talking season's almost done. It's about time for doing season. So let's do a little bit of Talking Badgers here on Talking Badgers. We're going to start with what I know about Wisconsin football after 15 fall camp practices and following the scrimmage today in Madison. What I know is this team's going to rely on a lot of young talent. For better or for worse, Luke Fickell needs his recruited talent over the last 2 seasons, over the last 2 recruiting classes, to make a pretty immediate impact in Madison. There are certainly a large number of veteran players who are going to be, the primary role players on this football team this fall. Nearly all of the starting defense, I imagine, is going to be made up of second, third year players, sophomores, redshirt sophomores, and all. But behind them, there is going to be a lot of young players who we saw this Wisconsin football team go to during the course of fall camp as major contributors, players that the coaching staff has raved about before fall camp, a little bit during the spring, all the way up until the end. And we have one of those players, Luke Fickell, talked about today after practice in a little scrum to the media. I was happy to attend. We're going to have some audio from him later on in the show as well. Some video actually for our viewers on YouTube, youtube.com/@TalkingBadgers. And these players are going to make an impact up and down the lineup, on offense, on defense, really all over. Wisconsin is going to end up getting help from guys. It starts with, players that you have to be really excited about making an immediate impact, probably playing maybe in a starting role, but maybe something that looks like it in Nicholas Clayton, the freshman outside linebacker, pass rusher. He's going to be geared up to get a hold of the quarterback. We already talked about on this show with Cam Wilhorn, Daryl Peterson coming out and saying he thinks Nick Clayton's going to be one of the greats. You have the guys that we knew about who going into this spring, it was clear they were going to be big impact players on this team, just given there weren't many other people in the room at that position. It's the running backs. Dylan Jones taking the bull by the horns in fall camp. I think pretty firmly establishing himself as, I mean, we're not doing a depth chart. We're not doing a depth chart. But I think he's who Wisconsin will probably give the bulk of its carries to. I think he will probably lead Wisconsin in rushing touches this upcoming season. Dylan Jones will, who only appeared in 3 games a season ago. He enters the season as a redshirt freshman. He received 4 carries against South Dakota, 65 yards on just 7 carries in that rout against Purdue. He's a player who seems primed to come in and play a significant role in this offense. Darian Dupree, who I think is going to play a very similar role. I mean, probably get 30+% of those carries, but maybe surprisingly is a player that after appearing in 11 of 12 games a season ago is maybe not the number 1 with a bullet, but a sophomore nonetheless, a sophomore running back in the Big Ten. And don't count out Gideon Atuka, who had a bit of an up and down day today for Wisconsin. And up and down, I think, is a little bit of the theme of this team. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the I feel section of the show. But overall, for a room that has Cade Yakimelli in it, standout veteran, it's the young guys who've been getting a ton of attention throughout the offseason in spring ball and to now. This is going to be a running back room dominated by young players. Even on the offensive line, you have Emerson Mandel, who appears slated because he took the bulk of his reps on the offensive line that was protecting Billy Edwards Jr. in camp, a player that the program has dubbed QB1. Emerson Mandel taking the bulk of his reps as the starting right guard. And that is a redshirt freshman who is stepping in right away. He is ready to get after it. Behind him, you have other players like Ryan Corey, who looks like he is the number 2 center in a room, or the number 3 center, rather, in a room where your starting center is banged up. So Ryan Corey playing the number 2 center role today, Saturday, August 16th, behind Kerry Kadenko. And that is another redshirt freshman who, if you have another lineman banged up, Ryan Corey may be called upon to play an interior offensive line role, as Jake Renfro did not practice significant snaps. I don't believe he participated in any of the live teamwork in the final practice. So he's a player who's missed a lot of time. And we mentioned that on this show as well earlier, earlier in the week, or maybe late last week. Ryan Corey's there. And then Colin Cubberly. He's seeing some reserve interior lineman snaps as well, and a guy who will probably be called upon if there are injury issues as well. At least a guy who I think is going to hit the 2 deep. It's a lot of young talent to rely on the offensive line. And when it's not just Jake Renfro getting injured, it's other players like Tucker Ashcraft, who was being held out for the remainder of fall camp. He was seen on a scooter today during the last fall practice. Luke Fickell asked about his status and when Wisconsin would have him back, and Luke Fickell's simple answer was he doesn't know, which doesn't sound good to me. If you're on a scooter and in a boot, doesn't seem that good. And so Grant Steck, redshirt freshman tight end, tight ends, typically a position that's going to take a lot of time to develop. I thought Grant Steck did have a pretty standout play today as he found the soft part of his own for a big first down catch from Danny O'Neal in part of that live scrimmage action. I thought he looked good. In terms of other pass catchers, Tresh Kekahuna, third year in the program, a redshirt sophomore, but behind him, he's the young guy of the top three, but behind him, Eugene Hilton Jr. I think he may have been the player to raise his stock the most in fall camp. Every day I was there, it just seemed that I felt good about what I saw from Eugene Hilton Jr. as a true freshman. And if one of those top three receivers, Vinny Anthony, Jaden Ballard, Tresh Kekahuna, get hurt, I wouldn't be surprised to see Eugene Hilton Jr. get the call up. I really wouldn't. And that might be what it takes is an injury. And, you hope for any and all of these young guys that nobody gets hurt. But that might be what it takes, given the fact that, as we have also previously discussed in the show, it is not really Jeff Grimes' MO to dip into the reserves and rotate his wide receivers all that often. Not really what he has historically done. But man, there's just sometimes that Hilton makes a play and you just think he's maybe too good to keep off the field. I think he did a good job on a play with the reserves. I believe it was Hunter Simmons was throwing, and nobody was open off the initial route, and he was the one guy who kind of broke and got himself open, gave the quarterback a chance, even though was not quite able to haul a ball in at the sideline. But there was another play on fourth down where Hilton caught a ball in the corner of the end zone on a little red zone drill, and he managed to get a touchdown. Just feels like you walk away from every single practice thinking, man, Eugene Hilton made another play today. And it's just another young guy. At middle linebacker, this is a place where there's a lot of talent in that room. And Christian Allegro, a junior, really stepping up. Tackett Curtis, really stepping up, really looking good. But behind them, you have a guy who the staff wanted to get on the field last year in Thomas Heiberger, who unfortunately got injured in fall camp and wasn't able to go to start the season and ended up playing 4 games as a special teamer. Just wonder what his ceiling would have been if he had not gotten hurt a season ago and exactly what role he is in for this upcoming year. Meanwhile, Cooper Catalano, who was here in the spring, an in-state recruit, just looks absolutely incredible, flying all over the field. He has the Wisconsin State high school record for most tackles and looks every bit of the part. And beside him now, after not being here in the spring, was Mason Posa, who, if it's not Hilton, maybe it's Posa, who has helped their stock the most among all players on this Wisconsin football team. Another true freshman who is playing alongside Cooper Catalano for most of the live period today. Luke Fickell waxed poetic about him in the post-practice presser, and we'll play some of that video for you now.
Yeah, I'd like to say he would have been here in the spring, looking how much further along he'd be, but believe me, I know why he wasn't here, but he does. In days like this where you go with some live action, it's intriguing to see who else shows up. Not that some guys haven't shown up all the last 17, 18 practices, but there's a difference to it when all of a sudden it goes live action. And I thought he did a really good job today. Consistency in any young guy is going to be really the key. And can you trust that guys can be consistent enough to go out there and do what they need to do and the role that which they have. But there's no doubt that the idea of let it fly in 4 to 6 fits right into his mentality.
That again was Wisconsin Badgers head football coach Luke Fickell talking about Mason Posa, the inside linebacker, true freshman, and just letting it fly, coming in, being competitive as he stepped into his role in fall camp. Even though he had to, go out and win a state wrestling title, and so that's why he could not early enroll and come to Madison for spring practice. But clearly, the staff very excited about Mason Posa, and just all these young guys, a lot of young guys. And like we mentioned, a lot of these guys, maybe reserves, maybe the second team, but somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to get hurt that you're not expecting. Somebody's going to have to step in and play a more significant role. And in a lot of these spots in the field, there are young guys waiting to step up and take those roles. Some of these players are redshirt freshmen. Some have more experience than others. But mostly it's small sample size guys or no sample size guys for some of these true freshmen like Posa, Hilton. Either way, it just presents more variance for what might happen this season because you just don't know exactly what you're getting out of any of these guys. They haven't played under the lights of a Big Ten game. So it's just more variance introduced. But I know that at some point, these young guys are going to be called on this season and be expected to make plays. I know that, and there are a lot of young guys. One position we did not talk about where I think young guys, transition, I feel later. I think Wisconsin has a good chunk of young guys who are going to make an impression is at cornerback. Corner. I think UW has a lot of options at corner, despite there being questions about general personnel availability. Of course, there's Nyzier Forkreen, who is not going to be available to start the season, probably not available until a few weeks into Big Ten play, as he continues to try to litigate his eligibility concerns and questions with the NCAA. But Wisconsin played him in a lot of the snaps where the defense was playing against the offense led by QB1 Billy Edwards Jr. Nyzier Forkreen lining up for a lot of snaps when Billy Edwards was getting the ball at quarterback. I find that peculiar. Doesn't seem that there is any update on Nyzier Forkreen's availability, but he is out getting a lot of snaps this fall, and Luke Fickell being very complimentary of him going out and playing something of a scout team role and going out and playing, particularly given that there are other questions at corner like Rico Holman, who Luke Fickell also emphasized today that he has a little ankle injury is what Luke Fickell called it. Holman spent the entirety of the final practice of fall camp on the sideline, hanging out with the trainer, doing what appeared to be, some agility drills, maybe trying to get that ankle going, but did not play any live team reps. Nonetheless, you have other guys out there who are out to make plays, and some of these guys are going to be in reserve roles. Hamir Latimer, who has had an impressive fall camp as a junior, and then again, young guys. Jamar Washington, who had an interception today, picking off Milosh, I believe, the walk-on quarterback, but an impressive play nonetheless by him. Jameer Scott, Kairos Gaines, young guys who will eventually get opportunities, but at a position where I think Wisconsin is recruiting perhaps the best overall of any specific position on the field. They are stacking a lot of young talent in that room. One of the young guys we did not talk about just now is Emilio Agard, who, if for some reason, and although I don't have any reason to believe this outright, but if for some reason Ricardo Hallman can't go in week 1 against Miami and Nyzier Forkreen does not go, Emilio Agard might be one of your 2 starting cornerbacks as a redshirt freshman. That might be the case. The other guy who I think is going to be at least one of those 2 starting cornerbacks, because I can't imagine both Ricardo Hallman and Nyzier Forkreen are going to be ready to go in week 1. One of those starting corners is going to be Deone Hill, brought in as a transfer after playing at Miami. Marshall before that comes in as a senior, ready to roll. And I think he's looked pretty solid. He spent most of practice today, maybe all the practice today during the live team reps, playing the boundary corner position while Nyzier played the field. Meanwhile, when Ricardo Hallman is back to play in his regular role, presumably Hallman will play the boundary, and then Hill will move over and play the field. Overall, I just think there's a lot of options in that room. And Luke Fickell spent some time blushing, trying to come up with more words for bragging about, talking up, fawning over, without being quite too colorful. Luke Fickell was complimentary of complimentary. It's a very Luke Fickell word. Complimentary of Deone Hill today after practice as well. We'll play that for you now.
But yeah, I think at the start of spring ball, I think that it was, maybe at first you didn't see exactly what you wanted to see from him. And, as he continued to push through and, you just weren't sure. And then with, the situation with where we are and what, Nye's situation, he was obviously thrust into a little bit of a different competitive role. And I think he shined in that. And I think that's where I've seen a big difference in him from where he was in the spring and where he's been all fall camp. And, maybe that's obviously just maturity, continue to understand what we expect of him. But I also think that there's a little bit of a different light with all that's going on and has been going on with Nye, and he's really done a great job and stepped up.
Again, that is Luke Fickell talking about cornerback Deone Hill stepping into a role with some real uncertainty in the cornerback room with little ankle injury to Ricardo Hallman and questions about Nysier Forkreen's availability, and Deone Hill really stepping in and playing a big role for this Wisconsin Badgers football team, as I imagine he will be doing this fall as well. If you would like to see the full media availability from Luke Fickell, that is up on our YouTube page that, hey, maybe you're watching this right now, youtube.com/@TalkinBadgers. We'll also link it in this podcast description if you are listening on your podcast platform of choice, Spotify, Apple, while you're headed to the podcast description to click that link. Meanwhile, hit those reviews. 5 stars really helps the show as well. But you can watch that for us. So a lot of cornerback options, some of them young guys, a lot of young guys overall ready to play. That's what I know. That's what I think about this team. What I feel about this team. After 15 practices, I feel mostly the same as I did before the 15 practices, which in some ways is perhaps an unsatisfactory, uninspiring, unexciting headline for the third segment of the show here that maybe made some people tune out to say, really? You watched all of that football? And you don't feel any differently now than you did then? But one, it's hard to overreact. I guess it's not that hard to overreact, but I guess I am not one to overreact to practice where it is inherently just a little bit difficult to tease out. Is the offense really putting on a show, or is the defense not where it needs to be? Is the defense real stalwart, or is the offense stalled during its install of the new scheme by Jeff Grimes? Overall, I feel like this team's going to have to scrap by to make a bowl game, which is what you would expect from a team that went 5-7 a season ago, went 7-5 2 seasons ago, and now is on the path where, like we mentioned, they have real questions about who's going to be available at cornerback. Those defensive backs, that defense is a weak link system. If Nysier Forkreen can't go, if Ricardo Hallman is held out for part of the year, you just don't know. I think there are a lot of options for Wisconsin at corner, as I mentioned. But I think that. I don't know that for sure. I know Wisconsin's going to rely on a lot of young guys in its depth, which just presents questions of variance, higher variance of outcomes. If that variance is high, well, heck, they could win 7 games. If their variance leads them to a low outcome, well, it's more like a 5-win team. There are some times in practice where this team, to me, appears to flash its highs. But there are other times in which It just looks incredibly frustrating. I don't think this was a great day of practice from QB1 Billy Edwards Jr. I don't know if there is something nagging him with the knee that he banged up at the beginning of the week on Monday. I don't know. Maybe not. I have no reason to necessarily think yes, for sure. I have no reason to think no. But it just seems like the offense is not quite clicking the way I expected it to based off of what I saw early in spring. There were fewer successful deep shots than I thought there would be. There was one really fantastic deep shot from Billy Edwards Jr. to Vinny Anthony. Vinny Anthony getting open deep in skeleton drill, though. So hard to say. Meanwhile, there were a couple of balls that looked to be thrown short, looked to be thrown in traffic. Deone Hill had an impressive interception on a ball that I thought was not a very intelligently thrown ball by Billy Edwards Jr. today. I don't know. And although that passing game was mostly stalled, the offense was mostly stalled, except for the third team offense. The offense led by true freshman quarterback Carter Smith. They moved the ball pretty well today. But while there was not a lot through the air, I did think the defensive line did get pushed around a little bit on the ground by the running backs. Gideon Atuka, though, right? I said some high, some lows, really flashes his high, but other times you can understand the coaching staff getting frustrated. Gideon Atuka ripped off a big run to some awesome blocking up front by the offensive line, particularly a big block by GP Benchwall that I noticed and noted when that happened for a big touchdown run. Like, what was it? What did I note? 20, 30 yards? 30-yard touchdown by Gideon Atuka. But he also fumbled twice today. Gideon Atuka did. So I don't know. Other things where it's just unsure and why I feel about the same as I did to start camp. I don't know who the starting place kicker is going to be. I don't feel like anybody pulled away in that competition. Again, of course, it is hard to assess appropriately when you are playing yourself over and over and over again. But there were just too many moments where you saw flashes of talent, you saw flashes of ceiling, soon after followed by, well, that's not quite right. And some of that is, hey, it's fall camp. You haven't even played real football yet. You got to work out the kinks. Early on in fall camp on this show, we were asking questions about, does Davis Heinzen need to be moved inside at left tackle? I didn't notice him today in the final fall practice, which means it's not, which means he didn't have a bad day. You're noticing the offensive line if they have a bad day. I did not really notice Davis Heinzen at left tackle today. I know it is unsatisfying to hear that my feelings on this team have not changed. A team that I think everybody wants to hear that it's not 6 wins that make a successful season in Madison. It's 8 or more, 8 setting a floor. But I think if this team is going to play to expectations and maybe play to slightly above expectations, it's going to be getting to a bowl game. And then there is a lot of young talent that I imagine will get some time, some experience, some snaps this upcoming year that will mature into its own for a slate next year that will allow Luke Fickell and the rest of his staff, Jeff Grimes, Mike Tressel, AJ Blazik, to show what they really got. And I feel like that's what you're waiting for, is probably waiting for a year that maybe presents some really fun moments this upcoming season, but also maybe presents some really frustrating moments this upcoming season. And you got to wait 12 months for it to pay off. We shall see. That's going to do it for today's episode of Talking Badgers. If you are still here, head to the comments on YouTube, youtube.com/@TalkingBadgers, Spotify reviews, Apple Podcasts, to let me know what you want to know from fall camp. Putting together a mailbag episode post-fall camp for this upcoming week because we still got a week to kill before game week against Miami of Ohio Redhawks, coming to Madison for a Thursday night game on August 28th. But until that happens, until we talk, we're going to talk some NFL Badgers in the next day or so. We're going to get to that mailbag episode. Maybe try to sprinkle in some basketball. We'll see. We'll see what we're going to do here. While we try to get by during the off week here. Until then, subscribe. youtube.com/@TalkingBadgers. You can follow me and the podcast on the website formerly known as Twitter @TalkingBadgers. Me, your host, Kedrick Stumbris, on Blue Sky and the website formerly known as Twitter @TalkingBadgers. Head to the site, badgernotes.com, for all the latest in Badgers news. And until we return to talk Badgers on Wisconsin.